Fellow auto detailers, welcome to the show that features interviews with today's most successful auto detailers. This is the Auto Detailing Podcast. Here's your host, Jimbo Balaam.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of the Auto Detailing Podcast. I'm Jimbo. Thanks for checking out this episode. This episode is brought to you by Autofiber.com and the Towel of the Month Club. If you're not signed up to the Towel of the Month Club, you're missing out. You can get a fresh new towel every single month for like literally pennies. More like dollars, but might as well be pennies. Anyway, Autofiber.com. You can check out the Towel of the Month. Literally, guys, it's like $24 or $25 for the whole entire year, not per month. And if you use code Jimbo, you save even a little bit more money on that. So it's really not much to get a sampling of a new towel every single month. Autofiber.com. Use the code Jimbo. This week's episode is with Joe Conley, a good friend. I've really enjoyed doing more and more podcast episodes with him. And today we talk about 33 things that he wished he knew or would have known before he started detailing. And there's some really cool nuggets in here. This is a great episode. We go well over an hour, and it's just a phenomenal episode littered with tips and tricks that you can use for your detailing business. So hope you guys enjoy this episode. Reach out to Joe on his website or through his website. Check out autofiber.com, Detailer Inner Circle, all the things, and I really hope you enjoy this episode with Joe and myself. So let's do a quick mic check. Joe, what'd you have for breakfast today?
Number 5 meal at McDonald's. What about you?
Which one is that? I usually go for the number 4, I think, which is the sausage egg muffin. What's the number 5? Is that a McGriddle?
Bacon, egg, and cheese McGriddle.
Oh
yeah.
Whew, see, I prefer the sausage to the bacon at McDonald's, but I don't think you can get a bad McGriddle sandwich.
Yeah, I don't think that is a thing.
I don't think that's a thing either, a bad one. Anyway, all right, we're good to go. Welcome to episode 390 of the Auto Detailing Podcast. And as Joe pointed out before we started recording, I'm coming up on 400. So if you have any ideas about who you would like to see for episode 400, I'd love that. In fact, I just had an idea, and I think it might work out. The chemist from Turtle Wax would be cool for number 400 to talk about Steel and Shine and ice spray wax. I had a conversation with them the other day, but I can't disclose what was talked about. Anyway, that would be cool. Anyway, Joe, that has nothing to do with you. I want to thank you for coming back and taking the time to come back on to the podcast. So welcome back.
Thanks, JB.
You got it. And we're going to go through, I'm reluctantly going to say 33, even though I don't love that number, but I guess we could go Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was 33, I think, so it's actually not too bad, but you're referencing Larry Bird. I prefer 32 or 34 or 24 or 8, but for those that haven't listened to previous conversations, they're probably like, what are all these numbers? Joe likes the Celtics, I like the Lakers, and, we'll just leave that right there. Even though, Joe, I will say, are you a little disappointed? And this is, I know you want to get through your questions and all that, but very important question. Are you a little disappointed at the lack of rivalry that exists in sports teams nowadays? More specifically, how willing guys are to switch to teams, i.e. Shaq?
No, quite honestly, I think they're overpaid, and they don't start playing hard till the playoffs. And I stopped watching the NBA a long time ago, and I've stopped watching college basketball also because it's just intolerable, because it's just pre-NBA at this point.
Pretty much. Do you think college players should be paid?
No, I think they. I think they're very blessed to be in the position that they're in, but I'll sound like negative Ned if I go any further with any of that.
All right. Well, I'll speak for myself then. I'm disappointed. I love the Bird Magic rivalry, and I think back in the 80s, you would have never seen Magic get traded to the Celtics or Bird get traded to the Lakers. It just would have never happened. And I just don't feel like that's in sports anymore, which I'm disappointed. But that has nothing to do with detailing. So anyway, let's get right into it, Joe. You've broken down these 33 quote-unquote nuggets into about 5 different categories. So where do you want to start? Was it workflow you wanted to start with, or communication?
Totally up to you. You could go with workflow, bladder, stomach, and knees, payment and pricing, or business and advertising. What would you like to start with?
Let's go communication, because I think that's kind of where, I guess you could, start with any of them, right? But I think it all starts with communication in a way, right? A client calls you, but I guess you could go business and advertising technically is first. But let's do communication. Why not?
All right, and I'm going to violate one of the rules of communication and talk at a fast clip.
Let's
so
do
bear
it.
with me. If it gets too fast, just throw a penalty flag.
You got it.
Number one.
Hold on.
Here,
Penalty flag.
I
penalty flag. Do you watch the NFL?
That soon?
That soon. Do you watch the NFL?
No, I'm not.
Okay, got it.
NFL.
I'm just making sure. I was like, hold on. He cut out basketball. Is he watching the NFL? I didn't think so, but all right. Proceed. Sorry.
So usually I'll let calls go to voicemail and see if they leave a message. Obviously, it's good if I pick up the phone and the customer is able to get a hold of me right away. But more often than not, it's a robocall, or it's somebody who just wants me to polish a turd the same day and they want it done for as little money as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's not the customer I'm going after. So if they're willing to leave a voicemail, that's a minimal step to engage. And if they do, because I do this part-time in addition to my full-time job, what I usually do is send a quick text message. Hey, got your message. I'm tied up at my regular job right now, but I will give you a call as soon as possible. And I think customers appreciate that because there's a quick response. It's not full-on conversation, but at least it's a quick response.
100%. And that's why for the inner circle, we kind of have that automated. If a customer puts in like a request for a quote, we have an automated text that goes out that says, and that's text, not a call, but we try to gear everyone towards that text. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a filter, right? It's like the first filter in qualifying the client.
Exactly. And that text, I usually close that with a link to the page that has the prices on there. So
Gotcha.
Right away, that opportunity for them to push back is sort of taken away because by the time I call them, they've already seen what the prices are. It's not a shock then when I say, here's the range or whatever else. I also, when I do speak with them on the phone, if they're not going to spend 10 or 15 minutes with me on the phone talking about their vehicle, they probably don't give a rip about their vehicle and they're probably not the right customer. I'm not looking to become Dr. Phil or anything like that in regards to their paint, but I do want to make sure that I understand how do they use the vehicle, what are their expectations, what are they most concerned about, all that kind of stuff. And that gives me a good opportunity to be very frank with them about the fact that, look, you might have a funky smell in your car. I don't have an ozone generator. So here's what I can do, steam cleaning, shampooing the carpets, et cetera. But please know that you've got options. And a lot of times when you say that, it's easier to close people because they realize you're not there just to close them. You're there to say, here's solutions to your possible problem. And if what I have to offer seems like a good fit, let's do this. If not, no worries.
Love that. You should get an ozone machine, by the way. You could get them relatively cheap on Amazon.
What do you think? I got a Tundra? where am I going to put all this stuff?
That's true. I don't carry mine with me. It's just at home, but it could be an additional revenue generator. Just saying.
Good point. Also, when I talk with them, when I get close to closing or asking for the sale, there's some lines that I'll trot out. Saying things like, I know you have other options. If you're shopping around, please keep in mind that part of the included price is I'm going to clay your vehicle right after I wash it. And most people either don't do it or that might be an extra charge. But I just think it's important. And then obviously when I'm done, I have them feel it because you can definitely feel the difference between a clayed section and not clayed. So I'll say things like I clay and shampoo all vehicles. That's just part of what I do. That's included in the price of what I charge. And I hate to turn down work, but I'm booked for X amount of days. So if you need it done immediately, I hate to say no to you, but I might need to do that. And sometimes that's enough for them. It almost creates this scarcity principle. And in doing so, they're more likely to say, oh, well, yeah, let's get it on the calendar. So I just need to be careful with that because I don't want to come across to them or anybody else as being that arrogant guy who's like, ooh, I'm so important, because I'm not. I'm just a guy.
Do you kind of have, with limited time, right? So are you kind of, from the sound of what you just said, do you kind of just have like, not one package option, but like and I'm kind of finding this out myself, like most people, they either want like a maintenance detail because they get their car detailed every once in a while or on a regular basis, so it doesn't really need a full shampooing or anything like that, or they need like everything, right? I'm finding fewer and fewer clients are like in that middle ground where they need a little bit more than a maintenance, but not quite a full. It's either like full blown or like basically a wash and spray wax with the vacuum, right? Do you kind of have, from what it sounded like, it almost sounds like you just have almost like one package. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
Or did I hear that wrong?
I used to have, 100%. I used to have a couple, and then that would be exponentially more difficult to explain because the pricing on a Suburban is different than the pricing on a Miata, let alone depending on which package you're choosing. So what I did a year or two ago is I just abandoned that and said, I'm just going to have one service. This is what I'm going to include because I think it's important on most cars, unless they want me to do a pre-sale detail because that's a little bit different.
Right.
And then all I'm doing is deciding, is it, do I have 3 pricing levels, small, medium, large, which I've adopted that because in my head it just makes more sense.
Right.
Or do I have 4 levels, small, medium, large, extra large? Because there's always that person with the RV, there's always a custom job on top of that. So I've really tried to slim it down, and it's helped to streamline things, and I think make me more effective in communicating to them and being upfront with them.
That's a great point. I was just talking about that with another detailer that I have kind of do a lot of work with me, or not a lot, but work with me sometimes, mainly on cars that are beat and I don't want to do them. And I'm like, I'll do it anyway. And so I bring him along with me. But we were talking about that on the last car we did when it was like, you know what? Like, it's the same thing every time on these cars. And it's kind of like everything needs to be done. It's almost like everything is just one package. So when you brought that up, it kind of triggered that in my head. And I'm like, I wonder if he's doing the same thing. Because you're right. It streamlines it, makes it way less confusing to a client. Do you want the gold, silver, gold, platinum, blah, 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 blah? Like, it's like, wait, what?
Yep.
Like, I'm confused. I just want my car detailed. Like, I don't know. Like, you tell me, It's like, fine, we'll do everything. Here's the price. Do you want it or not?
Yeah. So they call for a car wash, and all of a sudden you're pitching them precious metals, and they're wondering what the heck you're talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. What else in communication? What about after the detail?
Well, not there yet. When I'm first talking with them on the phone, another thing I think is really important is communicate how I deliver value, including I have a couple customers who might want to drop their vehicle off at my house, but obviously it's more convenient for them if I go to them and do it right there in their driveway. So it's reminding them of things like that. Excuse me. That's easier for them to deal with, which then just adds to the overall value proposition. I heard somewhere on the interweb on a daily detail tip about texting on my way, and I know that's part of the package you guys have. But I've tried that a little bit here and there. I'm not the most tech savvy guy, but it's interesting because people then are more engaged, or they're more likely to take the car seats out or be ready for me when I arrive. So it's little stuff like that makes a difference when it comes to communication.
Yep.
When I arrive, I try to text arrived just in case they're in an interior room, or there's a lady 2 weeks ago, she set up a 5 o'clock appointment. She said she'd be coming home right after work and get it done so that it's done in enough time so she can inspect it before the sun goes down, which I fully respect that. But she had arrived at her home, and I had arrived obviously right thereafter, and she was upstairs changing. So it was just super awkward because I'm down there ringing the doorbell, knocking on the door, wondering where she is.
Right.
And this isn't in a residential neighborhood. I mean, she lives out in the country. So I'm thinking that while I'm doing the detail, I'm like, wow, that not only was awkward, but I could be staring at the wrong end of Mossberg at some point because, here's some dude on the porch. Maybe they forgot about the appointment or whatever else.
Yep.
When I finish, obviously I bring them out, give them the keys back, give an invoice, give them some referral cards. At the very end, I'll look them right in the eye and say, hey, do I have your permission to send you a link so you can review me online? And I found that if I make eye contact and really slow down, they're more likely to follow through and review me. And, just to drive up SEO, I think it's really important to, if you're going to run AdWords, also have a healthy landing page, also have a active Google My Business page, also have Google reviews. So it's like this cyclone of things that need to happen in addition to getting paid for it. But, that's the time because I used to be, I would just email them afterwards, and maybe 1 out of every 20 some would click on the link and review me. But I've got it down to about 1 out of every 7 or 8.
Wow.
And it's just because, and I've yet to have a person look at me and say, no, I'm not going to review you.
Right.
But plenty of them say yes, and then they don't end up doing it, which I understand. I get it. But I just think it helps, because then I get more web traffic and more other people then connecting to me through Google, which I think makes Google's algorithm look at me as a little bit more legitimate. Does that make sense?
Totally. So you're focusing more on Google reviews than Yelp reviews?
Yeah, and
Got it.
Again, I'm going to go negative Ned when it comes to Yelp. So I'll say that.
But I think I watched this
feelings
I think I talked about it or mentioned it, or somewhere at least, maybe only in my own head. But the thing with Google reviews is that Google owns search. So eventually, I think it was like a CNBC YouTube video that I watched, like the rise and fall of Yelp. I think that's what it was. And it talked about or mentioned kind of the demise of Yelp beginning because of things like Google basically just stealing review, or not stealing reviews, but stealing the idea behind it and kind of cultivating what Yelp has done, but on their own platform. And since the biggest search engine in the world is Google, that inevitably kills Yelp, because Yelp is essentially a search engine too, right? But if Google uses reviews and pictures and all that too, they'll just squash Yelp and not even show reviews on Yelp, you know? So I actually think Google reviews are becoming more valuable than Yelp reviews.
I agree 100%. And let's go ahead and go down the Yelp road. I got one more thing about communication, but I'm chomping at the bit here because Yelp. So I did an A/B test last year, more than a year ago, just to see if I spend the right amount, or if I spend the exact same amount on AdWords during a month that I do Yelp ads, what's going to be the outcome? You know, who's going to give me more traffic? I was really tracking when people called, why were they calling, where they see me at, things like that. So fascinating thing happened with Yelp. I had maybe 4 reviews on Yelp before I ran Yelp ads. And 2 of them were, you know how they put them all the way down bottom and they kind of hide them? You got to click on a link to get to them because they're, quote, not recommended. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. I hate that part. I have like 12 or 8 or something not recommended reviews.
Right. So I had 4. 2 of them were hidden. And then I had another one right before I ran the Yelp ad. A miraculous thing happened once I started running Yelp ads. All 5 reviews popped up. They're all recommended all of a sudden. Oh, but wait, it gets better. So before I bought the Yelp ads, I called them, some slick guy up in New York who was trying to sell me on, you know, doing this or doing that. Basically, you can kind of knock down your competition by paying extra money, which I think is a complete load of BS. But anyway, yeah. So I asked him, you know, I've read online that, you know, if I use you guys, my reviews will show up. And if I stop using you guys, they're going to get hidden again. Oh, no, that's not a thing, he says. So after a month, I stopped using them. And guess what happened?
Bye-bye, they went.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, they got deep sixed. So I think currently I only have 1 Yelp review, and I'm fine with that because at this point, you know, Yelp, it's just not something I'm going to engage with any further.
Yeah. I have 11 not recommended reviews, by the way.
That's hilarious. You know what's so terrible about those reviews? I know. It's because you haven't given them any money.
Yep. And they're all 5
they're
stars.
Hold reviews hostage.
Yep.
Yeah.
11 not recommended and 14 recommended. So I'd have 25 reviews. Interesting. Yeah.
So they're holding those other ones hostage, I guess, hoping that you'll spend some money on Yelp ads to release them. But then the minute you stop spending money with them, they'll throw them back in the dungeon.
That's insane.
But that's just one guy's experience. I mean, I have yet to conquer the interwebs, so take what I say with a grain of salt. So getting back to communication, I found most customers, they really don't give a rip about my process. Right. All they care about is the car clean and is it shiny? So every once in a while I'll get a car guy or a car lady who's into that thing, and that's great. I love when that happens. And I can make recommendations about, okay, based on how you use it, this is what you might want to do. Oh, you're purchasing a new car. Have you thought about X, Y, or Z? But more often than not, their eyes glaze over. So I try to be real simplistic with it. If they tell me that they know what clay is all about, great. But if they don't, I'm going to leave a small section unclayed and have them feel it with their fingertips, just so that they can feel the difference. So I think that really drives the point home. It's little stuff like that that helps. I used to, on the phone call, in the qualification process, have them scale it from 1 to 10. 1's a dumpster fire, 10's brand new off the showroom floor. How would you scale your car? And then I could hear the wheels turning, and they were thinking, and they're like, what's the scale again? It's a 7. Oh, I thought 7 was bad. So it added a layer that didn't need to be there. And anyway, when people say, quote, it's not that bad, it's bad.
It's the worst. I learned that too. Like, not that bad is code word for the worst you've ever seen. And
exactly.
and usually, like, oh, it's terrible is code word for, like, it's a huge win. Totally easy. Nailed it. It's always opposite.
Yep. Yeah. So I just stopped having people scale it in, and I'll just focus more on, do you keep it in the garage or do you keep it outside? If they say garage, I know they care a little bit about it. If they say outside, I know I need to ask things like, well, is it kept under a tree? Is it kept next to a mulch bed? Is it kept next to sprinklers? So you can kind of diagnose some things before you arrive and have a plan of action.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cue the Jeopardy theme music. Next, do you want to go business and advertising, payment and pricing, or workflow, or bladder, stomach, and knees?
Let's go bladder, stomach, and knees, just because I think it's funny and I want to talk about it.
Well, it's a huge letdown because there's only 2 bullet points.
Got it. All right.
Given that, I think it's super important to know where the closest convenience store is. Just to, if you're hungry or if you need to run to the bathroom, whatever else, there's nothing less professional than having to ask a customer to use their bathroom. So it's always important to know where I'm at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I was going to start an Instagram account. I was going to start an Instagram account called The Places IP. And I've yet to do it, but
you would. Out of all people, you would.
I have 2 problems. One main problem is that I have the world's smallest bladder. So I'm constantly trying to find a bathroom. And in that, I've developed like an extremely good sense of where the closest bathroom is and how to get to it like as soon as possible, because I'm always on the lookout. So I go to the bathroom and luckily it's always only pee, like never number 2. So I'm thankful for that, because I have family members that have the opposite problem. Anyway, so I go pee in all these weird places, right? And so I thought to myself one day, like, that would be the funniest Instagram account, like The Places I Pee. And it would range from like going to pee inside of Griot's Garage's bathroom at the Griot's Garage headquarters to like the back building of a Arco gas station in like South Central. Not really, because I'm never in South Central, but like you get the idea, like gold plated to like trash. But I've yet to do it.
But then the question is, can you make that, and pardon the pun, but can you make that a revenue stream?
I don't know. My thought behind it was I'm doing it anyway because I pee everywhere, that it doesn't take that much extra time to like snap a picture of it and then, figure it out from there. So I was like, I'm already there.
Okay.
Anyway, I should move away from this.
I just got an image that I didn't need. I can't unsee it.
I'm not in the pictures. I'm not in the pictures, but that would be next level, Joe. I like that idea. Me peeing from the back.
I just want to publicly apologize to anyone listening to this podcast. I had no idea we were going to focus on Jimbo's bladder.
We went way left field on that one. Sorry about that.
As far as knees, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm 44 years old, so getting up and getting down isn't as easy. And buying a Neo pad, I have no idea why I didn't do that from the outset, but that has been something that is essential and is just a very helpful tool to have. Knee pads would be a pain in the rear end, plus it look like a giant dork.
They
help in that department.
I tried that one time.
Having a Neo pad helps. Knee pads?
Yeah, and like you said, not only do you look like a dork, they're bulky and sweaty and gross and like, ugh. They just, I think I bought them once and then wore them once and never wore them again.
Yeah.
So have you
I
thought
had a
about?
customer give me an older pair, but I haven't used them because what you just said.
Yep. Have you seen one of those like rolling carts that? I've never bought one because they look super uncomfortable, but the people that say they have one seem to say the opposite. But like the I don't think they're called creepers, but it's kind of like a creeper, but you're like kneeling in it, but it has like a bike seat on it. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I have.
Do you have,
You
one,
have
of
one
those?
of those?
I do not. I do not because it looks very awkward. And looks extremely uncomfortable. But everyone that I've seen talk about them says how comfortable they are. So I just wondered if you had one of those. Seems like kind of a knee saver.
I'm constantly looking for ways to shave down what I have in the back of my vehicle at any one time. So
Likewise.
adding equipment and finding off-label uses for stuff. It's always a huge win when you realize, oh, I can use this for that, and all of a sudden you can delete a tool or delete a chemical. That kind of stuff is fun.
Yep.
All right, next up, you want to go workflow, payment and pricing, or business and advertising?
Let's do workflow.
Workflow it is. I feel like I should cue the Jeopardy theme song.
I wish I had a button that I could press. That would be next level, but I don't. So use your imagination, everyone.
So, yeah, I would hum it, but then people would instantly tune away. I don't want to ruin your statistics. Ask the customer if they have a hard time or a hard end time, or if I'm parked in okay spots. So when I arrive, obviously I want to park with the rear of my vehicle facing their vehicle just so I can get stuff in and out and it's easy. But I also want to make sure, is somebody coming home, or am I parked in a way that your mailman's going to give you the hairy eyeball? And it's just little courtesies like that I didn't think of at first, that now I make sure that, that just adds to the overall professionalism. And the hard end time, I think I've heard you talk about it before. If people say, oh, I'll just be going 20 minutes, well, you can take that times 5 or so, because they're not going to be back in 20 minutes. They'll be back in an hour and a half.
Yep.
Or, oh, I just need to run to the ATM. All of a sudden the ATM is like in the next zip code.
Yep. When they say that, it's like, nope, I take card.
Yeah, all of a sudden you pull out the square and you're good to go. But if I ask them if they have a hard end time, because I can think of a couple customers who, even though I thought I over-communicated, hey, this is going to take at least 3 hours, by 2.5 hours, they're sitting there pacing because they got to pick Junior up from soccer practice. And they didn't calculate the fact that if I'm ending in 3 hours, Junior needs to be picked up in 2 hours and 45 minutes. Well, either I'm going to rush and it's going to be a poor job or whatever else. So just to avoid that whole scene, I always try to make sure that I ask them, hey, do you have a hard end time? If I'm done 3 hours from now, if I've got your vehicle tied up, is that okay? Is that cool in the gang? And get them to, verbally say yes. So they're thinking about that kind of stuff.
It's almost impossible to over-communicate with people, huh?
Have you ever had a customer say, enough, just clean my car?
No. No, I mean, I think when the only thing that comes close kind of piggybacks on what we talked about with when they start to glaze over, because you're giving them too many options. And so at that point, they're like, just clean it. But even I have a regular client that's fairly new, and he gets like all my automation stuff, like text reminder, follow up for a review, email the day before, like all of them. And I see him every 2 weeks. And I told him, I'm like, hey, I can turn off some of that stuff, like, I'm sorry, it's not really it's meant to be not that frequent, but I'm on my way, I'm here, I finished my review, how'd we do, blah, like everything, right? And I'm like, it's a lot, right? To me, if I was a customer, I'd be annoyed, it would be an over communication with me, right? And he's like, dude, I absolutely love it. He's like, you're always top of mind to me, keep it coming, I love it. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know if you can over communicate certain things. I think you can over communicate the detail service, and by that glazing over, but like not much else. How about you?
That guy sounds like a bit of a unicorn. I've never had a customer tell me to stop, but that guy's unique. I love customers like that said, keep it coming.
Yep. And he is
stay top of mind.
Yeah. He's my best client that I have. He is their best friend. They've known, like, he's known the wife of my best client for like since they were 2 or something like that. So it kind of fell in my lap. But he is a bit of a unicorn, you know. So, but well, I think it's over communicating.
Let him know if he's got any family members who are like-minded who live in South Central Pennsylvania. I'd love to know who they are so I could connect with them.
There you go. I forgot you were in South Central Pennsylvania. When I said South Central, I was referring to LA, but that's funny that worked out like that. That was just a recall.
No, I'm pretty sure nobody's confused by that. I mean, we've got the Amish around here, and let's just say you don't.
That would be wow. Do you think the Amish have a buffer that they run without a machine?
Is that where your mind goes?
It does. This is a train
hilarious.
Wreck. Sorry.
I have no idea. You stumped me.
That would be cool.
I'll hail a buggy next time I see him and ask him. So when I arrive at a customer's house, I take a look at where's the vehicle positioned, where's the sun going to track within the 3 hours that I'm going to be there, just so I don't have to worry about water spots, and is it facing downhill? Because if it's facing uphill, you got to do that whole thing where, you keep your butt cheek against the door panel, and, it constantly closes on your leg. So yep. I'll usually tell customers, hey, would you mind turning the car around? And sometimes they look at me like I'm a weirdo. I'd rather have them do it just for liability purposes. And I'll explain to them, if it's facing down, I can use gravity, doors stay open, works a lot easier. They look at me and go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And they do it. So,
yep. I was just talking to someone else about that the other day, like mobile detailing versus shop detailing. And that was one of the things they brought up. They're like, I hate working on hills. And I'm like, or slanted driveways. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. Like, me too. I think that's like a mobile detailer's worst nightmare is like, if your car or the client car is on a hill and you're like doors constantly closing, it's one thing why I like working out of a truck. Don't have to worry about the back door closing, or the bed door closing. But yeah, hills are the enemy.
Yeah. This flat land is great when you pull up and it's nice and even, but that's not how it is. As far as running the electrical extension cord down one side of the vehicle and the hose down the other, I used to try to manage them, and I just try to keep them separate. Now, it's such a basic thing, but 4 years ago, I didn't understand concepts like that until I'm out on the driveway. It's like WWE, and I'm losing to the hose, which is wrapped up in the extension cord. And I'm confident at that very moment, the customer's up in the second-story window looking down at me like, who is this jackwagon in my driveway?
Yep, wrestling with extension cords and hoses.
Yeah. Or the Ring doorbell is pointed directly at me, and they're capturing it and then uploading it to
So that's one thing I actually interesting. I don't know if this is in your list, but that's actually one thing that I look for right away is where are the cameras positioned? Does this house have cameras? And by me, like the majority of my clients have cameras, right? So it's like, where's the camera positioned and how can I get out of that frame as best as possible, if at all possible? Because I guaranteed I'm doing something that the customer does not want or need to see at some point during that detail. You know what I mean? Or they're listening to my conversation, right? So I'm always I try to be hyper aware of where the cameras are, but I don't know if I'm just a weirdo.
I think we all are in our own respects, but just I'm thinking that you roll up and all of a sudden you're doing like a security.
I mean, not that bad, but that's why I wear a hat and sunglasses, and then my eyes are just scanning everywhere of like, boom, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wow, that one's a little hidden. Almost missed that one, and perfect. We're secured. All right. So.
As long as you don't start talking into your sleeve or anything else like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, hey, you never know.
So something that helps the detail go by faster, in addition to books on tape or on CD or whatever, is
the auto detailing podcast.
About what's the next?
Oh no, not that.
Well, that was assumed. I mean, that's on the way too. That's just it's like the hype music before the warm up. But thinking about what's the next step, what's the next tool I'm going to need to use, what's the next chemical, what's the next location of the vehicle I'm going to need to go to, because as I go on, the more efficient I get, obviously that drives up the profit margin. So if I can constantly be thinking one step ahead, which is such a basic thing, but again, until you've done it and you kind of perfected your own method, you don't really think about stuff like that. We already talked about carrying as few tools and equipment as I can find and finding off-label uses for chemicals. I got a vacuum with a removable motor that also serves as a leaf blower, so it acts as an air supply to blow out cracks and crevices and to dry the vehicle, so it's multi-use. Coiling up the hose. So you probably work at a lot of places where they have gardeners, right?
Every time, if you want to see your gardener, just have me come wash your car. That's the cue. Guaranteed.
But so, there are some houses where the people are very affluent and they have other workers who show up and do work, but it might also be that the customer cares about little stuff, and I don't want to be blamed because some guy was there the day before and didn't coil the hose up properly. So if I get there, even if it's a train wreck, I'll pull it all the way out, I'll coil it up properly, and then I'll use the water bib and, secure my own hose to it. That way I don't look like the guy who couldn't figure out how to coil a hose up, even though it wasn't me who left it.
How many times I've been that guy wrestling with, I think I have, because I think it has to, and this is embarrassing because I get accused of not being a manly man all the time by my in-laws. So everyone listening, hold your thoughts and comments because I already have heard them all. But I've wrestled with the hose so many times trying to freaking coil it up, only to have my father-in-law come over and be like, okay, scoot over, little boy. Let me do this for you.
He pats you on the head while he does it, right?
Like, oh, you still need help with this, huh, Jimbo? We've only known each other 10 years, but still haven't figured out how to coil a hose. I'm like, dude, I could barely swing a hammer either. You want to talk about that right now too? Because my father-in-law's like a manly man, could build a house with like his own hands, and I like can barely plunge a toilet,
So you're like the anti-MacGyver, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got AAA, I got stuff, and people, yeah. So, I do enjoy it though. Like I do enjoy learning new things. So but the hose, man, that thing's a pain. It can be.
Yeah, but it's stuff like that I need to keep in mind. Again, even if I don't use their hose, which usually I don't because I bring enough of my own, that I need to make sure I'm leaving the place better than I found it, even if it's not mine. Even if I can tell the customer doesn't have a gardener and they're the ones who have the hose all jacked up, it's still nice to leave it that way because they might notice that, and they might
for sure
be offended by it, or they might recommend me to somebody else because not only does this guy clean the car and do a good job, he left it looking better than he found it.
Well, it carries through that theme of like your attention to detail, right? Like it carries your clean workspace and leaving their space clean. And I'll tell you what, leaving a clean workspace can get you out of a lot of trouble too. When I used to do a lot of office buildings, leaving the area that I worked in clean, like either as clean or cleaner than when I got there, will like really get you out of some serious trouble. Like if you leave it clean, almost no one cares that you were even there. It's crazy.
Yep.
So like
the leaf blower I mentioned earlier, a lot of times I'll go in their garage before I get the vehicle wet and I'll blow all the leaves and the cinders and everything else out. And I don't point that out to them. It's not like I'm begging them for a tip because I did something like that. Right. But it's little stuff like if I pull the car back in and there's cinders on the floor because it just fell off during the winter, it's something that I can then track in and work over top of myself, and that's just dumb. So I try not to do dumb things.
Yep.
Lastly, for workflow, batching work. What's that?
I said not tripping over yourself can sometimes be hard, or not being dumb. That's a hard one for me.
Yeah. I try to batch work that can be processed at a later date so that when it rains, I got a pile of things that need to be processed or caught up on. Whereas in the past, I try to stuff all that stuff, daily when it just doesn't need to be. There are some things that can wait. And then therefore when it rains, I'm not bummed out because I got a pile of stuff I got to get to anyway.
Right.
So it's helpful to kind of slow down.
Full-time job helps with that too. Yep.
That helps me to stay on track. Payment and pricing or business and advertising?
Let's go payment and pricing. Were you gonna say business and advertising?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, I wasn't. I'll go with either one. I'm good. business to business is good because it usually represents more volume, but it's pain in the rear end because I don't know if they're on net 30 terms or if I'm going to get paid the same day or if it's going to be me tracking them down with 5 phone calls. So business to consumer, the B2C seems to be better, better profit margin, faster payment, sometimes a little bit goofier, but I've just found that's. I used to get really excited when somebody would call saying, "Oh, I got 5 vans that need to be cleaned."
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing, but if they've all got ladders on them and they're all out during the day, and that means I need to show up at like 4 a.m. or whatever else. There's all this other stuff in addition to how am I going to get paid for it? And is Linda in accounting in a sour mood and she's only going to cut checks on the 3rd Wednesday of a month? Therefore, I just missed it because it was last week. So I need to wait, and then I got to figure out how to get around Linda.
That is I do not understand that. It's like, well, we don't cut checks until, like you said, the 3rd Wednesday of the month. It's like, excuse me? Like, no, I don't operate like that. My wife did some work with Taco Bell. You guys have Taco Bells out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
She did some work for Taco Bell, and it took them like almost 60 days to pay. It's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. I'm like, how is that even legal? But whatever. Another subject for another day. I'm like, I hate working for corporations like that. 60 days? I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah, because usually you don't think to ask that on the first phone call. And when you give them the invoice, if you don't clarify it right then, you might be giving it to someone who's checking the vehicle who's then going to send it through interoffice mail.
Yep.
And therefore you're following up with the wrong person. It's a huge time waste, but it's good because it's volume, but it's bad because it usually messes with payment terms. Speaking of payment terms, it was important for me early on to decide, how flexible am I going to be in payment? Is it going to be cash only? Is it going to be cash or check? Is it going to be cash, check, or PayPal? Am I going to do Square or Venmo? Every once in a while, if I think the phone call is going good and I want to assure myself that later on when I ask for the sale, I'm just trying to get them to laugh, I'll say, when they ask about payment, excuse me, I'll say something along the lines of, well, I'll accept checks, cash is preferred, or you can pay me in bacon wrapped filet mignon. And then I wait, and it's either crickets,
right,
or they think it's hilarious. And if it's hilarious, we're going to get along smashingly because they also eat meat, and they're not all, tofu like.
Like Taco Bell with is it Taco Bell that has Beyond Meat, or is that Del Taco? They have like Beyond Meat.
We don't have Del Taco around here.
Oh, really? Missing out.
Oh, you mean that fake meat stuff that Burger King is
Is that doing? Burger King? That I thought I saw it somewhere like Beyond Meat. It's like, what? Whatever.
It's like fake meat. That's weird.
Do you like Brazilian steakhouses? Have you ever eaten at a Brazilian steakhouse?
Negative, but I'm saving up my money because there is one in Baltimore. I'm just waiting for my sons to be old enough for it to be a good return on investment.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Because I'll be that guy sitting at the table with the coaster turned over the whole time.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Asking for the doggy bag. Yep. I hear you.
Along that same vein, with 2 customers, instead of saying bacon wrapped filet mignon, I would say things like, Winchester White Box 9mm range packs, because that's what I like to shoot. And it was just crickets, and then it just got weird. So it's one of those where, if I'm going to try to be funny, I realize that there's certain ways that I might be, and then many ways that I'm not. So if it's funny in my head, I need to run it past my wife. And if she laughs, maybe it's worth trotting out. Otherwise, kill it.
That's the best judgment. The wife. Oh, man.
Well, it's true.
It is true.
Thankfully.
That's why it's funny. It's true.
You sound like a bonehead. So if I over-deliver in some way, I always point it out after I've accepted payment because I don't want to come across like, hey, tip me. Because I'd rather, instead of tipping me, they review me online because I know it's going to benefit me in the long run with other random customers. So oftentimes, just to increase on the way out, I'll say things like, and I also, did X, Y, or Z, whatever extra that I decide to do. Because, let's say you have very little trim on your car, but it was grayed out. There's some tiger stripes, and I hit it with some solution finish. I'm not going to charge them for that.
Right.
If it's Chevy Avalanche, I'm charging them.
Right.
But if it's just, a thin stripe down bottom, I'll say something to them like, hey, I restored your trim here. You should see a difference. And then maybe next time you want to get your other vehicle done. So it's good upsell on a different vehicle, or a way to kind of plant a seed in their mind, if that makes sense.
It does. I like that a lot. I like that after the payment, because then it, like you said, it doesn't make it seem like you're begging them. It's just like, hey, I did this for you.
Right. I don't want to come across like I'm fishing for a tip.
Right.
But in the same respect, I want to over deliver and then make sure my final interaction with them, kind of like leave on a high note, if you will.
Totally.
We talked earlier about I used to have good, better, and best packages, and then an upcharge for larger vehicles, and I just canceled that, and I just have one service, and then just small, medium, and large. I have a price range, so I know some people will say starts at, and then they give a price, or they have a fixed price. I just have a price range. That way it's easier for me to calculate in my head. I'm not great with numbers, so if I can make it as simple as possible and it makes sense to me, I can usually make it make sense to customers. Here in Pennsylvania, usually right after the winter, there's that lull, March and April, where it still might snow, so people are kind of hesitant to get their car done, but I get a lot of calls about, hey, I just want the interior of my car done, so I can kind of reset it for them, because they tracked a lot of salt in their car. So I don't put that on my website because I don't want to offer that as an option, because there's a conundrum of, okay, you want exterior only? Well, what about the door jambs? Do they count exterior because they're painted, or are they part of the interior? And if I'm going to get a hose out to do the door jambs and do the interior, I might as well do the exterior while I'm there. So when somebody asks me that, I'll usually put it back on them and say, hey, happy to service your vehicle, but if I do the inside only, your windows are still going to be kind of nasty to look at. So I've found that, a lot of customers are disappointed, and obviously I don't want to leave you disappointed. So it might be worth waiting a week or two till you feel better about the weather, or just have me do the whole thing. And more often than not, they'll see the value in that and decide just to do a whole detail instead of trying to cheap out.
Like that.
I've got a la carte options, and I try not to make them an upsell. And I actually tell customers, look, I'm not trying to be king of the upsell here, but you might want to consider having me steam clean your vehicle, because it's going to make a difference, because Junior spilled a sippy cup in the back, and shampoo will help, but steam clean will really help get down in those cracks and crevices, or, headlight restoration or paint correction or fabric protection, all those extra things that if it were my vehicle, here's why I think it would make a difference. So maybe you want to consider it. And I'll usually tell them on the phone call, hey, when I see your vehicle, I might make some recommendations. I just want you to know up front, I'm not trying to drive up the cost on you, but if you're going to invest in detailing, I want to make sure I clean your vehicle, then I enhance how it looks, and then I protect it. So here's why I'm recommending X, Y, or Z.
Love that.
All right. Final category, business and advertising.
Let's hear it. Doing good
so
on time,
early
too.
on, good. Early on, I would go to Target, because a little bit more discerning shopper goes there than Walmart. And in the parking lot, I'd leave flyers on the cars, which was dumb, because I've gotten exactly 0 customers from ever leaving a flyer or a brochure on a car. So if I could tell myself 4 years ago something that's dumb, that's a waste of time, is don't do that. It just makes people angry. Systematizing everything that I can. So I know in the detailer inner circle, you guys have already created a lot of that stuff, but it's little things like on my phone. So I dog Yelp earlier, but every once in a while I'll get a decent customer through them. But a lot of times what happens is, as a customer, you can go on Yelp and basically say, I want detailing, here's some basic information, and then you broadcast that to 4 or 5 detailers who are then theoretically supposed to give you a quote, which I can't stand that, because you never know a whole lot about the car.
Right.
So instead of responding, I'll hit need more details, and I have on my clipboard on my phone, my son showed me how to use that function, that I can just drop 3 or 4 sentences in there about, hey, I'd love to give you a very specific quote. I need some more information on your car. Could you please either call me or text me at this number? Let me know your cell phone number. Glad to hop on a phone call with you. There's no reason why you would need to choose me just because we're on a phone call, so they don't feel like they're indebted to me. But I just want to find out more information about it before I give them a quote. So every time I would have to type something like that, or because I'm not the greatest communicator, if I hit the microphone button and try to speak it to my phone, it would just come across as kind of wonky and have weird characters in there.
Right.
So now I just go to the clipboard, drop it in, and usually, in my mind, if I'm listening for the notifications, usually then I'm probably one of the first people to respond, even though I'm not responding with a number, because all they want is a number. I'm responding with, some type of response. And from that helps me to determine who's going to be a good customer. Because if they're going to respond to that, there's a high likelihood they're going to want to eventually engage with me or somebody else, and they're not just fishing.
Do you have an iPhone?
No. It's a...
Or you have an iPad, though, right?
What the heck is this? It's Android. Probably about 3 or 4 years old.
Got it. The reason I asked is because on iPhone and probably iPad or all iDevices, there's a thing called text replacement. But then there's also a program that you can get called Text Expander. So it's free on iPhone and iPad or iDevices or whatever. But you can set short codes. So like JB, right? And it when you type JB, it would automatically spell out Jimbo Balaam, right? Or whatever you preset it to, right? So I have all these like preset things like people ask me for my address a lot, right? So I have like JADADD as the text replacement, and then my address populates instead of the text. So I thought that it's kind of like you grabbing from your clipboard on your thing too. You could always just like have a text replacement, but it might for people listening, a text replacement or text expander system may be a good way for like frequently asked questions to be able to respond. My problem is I got to remember what I set, which is usually a problem. But again, if you could have short, and I have like ones for my wife and stuff because I forget, like, hope you have a great day. Like, I just Heather 1 and it like populates like have a great day, and I'm like perfect. That's what I want to say.
Husband of the year hacks.
Yes.
Man, people are getting all kinds of practical advice.
That's it.
So, in addition to not paying money to Yelp, I think Better Business Bureau is also not worth the spend, because it's kind of like the Yellow Pages at this point. I mean, maybe when I was growing up, people were looking at Yellow Pages, but that's not a thing anymore. So, people rely on the Google machine to tell them, who to call, or it's just going to call for them, or they're going to talk to Alexa or Siri or whoever else. And taking the time to look them up on Better Business Bureau, I don't think is as effective as going to somebody's website, and if their landing page looks like it was done in WordPress in 1994, they're probably not going to engage with you. But if it's somewhat decent, there's a better chance, and then maybe you have a video on there or a couple videos or something like that, there's a better chance then that people are going to follow through, as opposed to paying Better Business Bureau X amount of dollars per year just so you can get a listing with them.
Which has to be the most obsolete thing possible.
Yeah. Well, I know that they still advertise it and still.
I mean, what a great scam that they've developed, though, right? Like, what a name, the Better Business Bureau. Like, that is a great, and I think people think it's like a government agency. It's like a great scam they got going on.
So personal cell phone numbers of realtors and insurance agents are usually easy to find online. So that's a great way to market to that group. It's just a matter of coming up with the particular language that I would want to use in a random cold text, if that makes sense. But because they want to be accessible to people, they usually put their personal cell phone numbers somewhere on their website. And it may be hidden 1 or 2 pages down, but it's worth data mining, if you will, especially for me during the winter months, when you're complaining about 60-degree weather and we're sitting here freezing. That's a great time to.
That's right. It's really warm today. I think it's 75.
Yeah, I wanted to put a negative comment on one of your videos because I looked, the time date stamp was like January 19th, and you said something along the lines of, "Burr, it's 65 today." I felt like saying, "You got a lot of nerves, Al."
My AC hasn't turned off today.
You actually seem like you were affected by the cold too.
We've had a horrible winter. All right, it's like yesterday. I think was like one of the first like warm days we've had in 6 months. It was like, geez, we've had the like gloomiest, rainiest winter I've experienced in like the past 10 years. It's been insane. So I'm good. I'm good for the next 10 years.
Horrible winter in Southern California for everybody else.
I'm out. If winter's going to be like this now, I'm out. I don't know where to go
All
though.
right, I
Hawaii.
only got a couple. Yeah. As far as the leave behind, you remember that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza left a big furry hat behind to get the girl to call? Did you watch the Seinfeld?
I was young when it was out, but I do remember that episode.
So the Costanza leave behind, if you will, I used to think was important and would impress people. I could never really nail it. I never left a big fuzzy hat, but I would leave peanut butter crackers, but invariably I just cleaned the car and they open it up, crumbs go everywhere, so it's kind of counterproductive. And then I would leave water, but water would get hot and nobody in their right mind wants to drink hot bottled water. So I thought about, I'll leave a candy bar. Well, it's just going to melt and be nasty. So I'm like, well, I'll leave a rag. Well, that insinuates that they're dirty and nobody wants to be that guy saying, you're dirty, here's a rag. So I said, well, I'll just give them some mints. But then I thought, well, mints insinuate that they got stinky breath. So I've yet to figure out a good leave behind.
A business card?
So I just abandoned that whole idea. So I wanted to leave behind referral cards, but I've even found that I have to explain that to people like, hey, here's a referral card. If you give it to somebody, they get a free upgrade on their first service. And I show them that. That way they're more likely to hand it to somebody because they get to give somebody something for free, if that makes sense.
Got it. That makes sense. You could get like print out like a $20 bill or a $5 bill as your referral card.
True.
But
and there's some people that they'll fold their brochure up like an origami swan or something, but I think that's too fussy. I mean, that's not me, and I want to keep it as simple as possible. So I've yet to master the leave behind, so I've just left the whole concept behind, if you will. When things slow down, I print up a list of people who purchased at the same exact time last year, and I'll call them because it gives me a good excuse to market directly to them to say, hey, it's been 12 months since I saw your vehicle. Really love to connect with you, because I usually get their voicemail because they're like me. They don't answer their phone because they're smart, because they don't want to talk to robocallers. So I'll leave a voicemail, and I'll try to personalize it by saying, hey, it's been 12 months since I detailed your Jaguar. It looked great last time. That blue really popped. Love to do it again. If you're available in the next couple of weeks, let me know. So some get annoyed by that, but there's quite a few that have said, oh, we were just thinking of you, or hey, I appreciate the reminder. I wasn't thinking of it. So it's worked out. And the people who get annoyed by it probably wouldn't have purchased again anyway.
Right.
And I have gotten some people who then respond via text saying, remove me from your advertising list, which is fine. I don't know.
Hey, like Pete always says, good marketing detracts as much as it attracts. So you'd rather have someone off your list who's not interested in your services anymore than continue to either bug them or even bother wasting your time trying to get them to, use your service.
Yeah. No sense keeping somebody in my funnel if they're not really in my funnel anyway.
Exactly.
If they leave, then I have room for somebody else in my funnel.
Yep. Exactly.
Finally, it's been really helpful to set crazy big goals as far as detailing part-time in addition to my full-time job. Was initially to get out of debt, and then we were able to do that and pay off the mortgage. Then it was to replace my wife's car, and we were able to do that. Now I'm saving up for a vehicle. So having these lofty goals has been really helpful. You know how it is when you're in the back seat of a Mini Cooper. I'm 6 feet 5 inches tall. I have no business being in the back seat of a Mini Cooper.
How do you
but
even
if I'm
get
in that
back
situation,
there? Right.
It's a process. And then invariably you'll be there and you'll be, vacuuming, and you're like, oh, if I only had my aerospace and a rag right now, it'd be perfect. So you got to extract yourself and go back in. But in that moment, I could either develop a negative attitude like, oh, this sucks. I'm folded up like a pretzel and I'm sweating and every inch of my body is moist. I can't stand this. Or I can say to myself, you know what? That Kia Stinger isn't going to buy itself. So how about I suck it up and get through this, because it's going to get me one step closer.
Yep.
So
it has it. You know what's been an interesting thing for me that I kind of wrestled with a little bit is when you set goals that you feel are lofty, right? And maybe you had this, and we've done the podcast episode about where you talked about you paid off your house and all that. But it's interesting, like when you, I guess I'll speak for myself, when you start hitting these goals that you thought were really big and then you achieve it, it kind of, for me, it messed with me of like, dang it, I didn't set a big enough goal. Or like I went through a time where I'm like, I got to set goals again because I didn't think I was going to get to this, like not necessarily this level, but like I didn't think I was going to get here. Like, and this was kind of like a 5-year goal, a 10-year goal, and it's been 2 years. Like, I gotta reset, you know. And the first time that happened to me, it kind of messed with me. I don't know if it's the same for you. So I've set a lofty goal for myself concerning my YouTube channel, and I'm excited to hit it, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But I'm as worried about hitting it and rewarding myself for my goal as I am trying to get there. If that makes any sense.
It does, and you know, I listen to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who he wants to buy the Jets, or I'll listen every once in a while to Grant Cardone, who constantly talks about 10x, and then I start thinking, well, my big, hairy, audacious goals aren't hairy enough, or they aren't big enough. So for your YouTube, I gather, you don't need to tell me because it's none of my business, but I gather you probably have a number. So, you know, 2 years from now, when you look back on that number, is that number going to seem small? And if you picked a number that was 5 times that number, would you get to that number quicker anyway? You know what I mean?
I know. Well, I still need to research how much courtside season tickets for Laker game are. Of course,
so you can put some players around.
They're not worth even going to watch now. But that was a goal I forgot about. Like, I said that when I first started detailing, like, oh yeah, that would be cool, like, to take my kids to, because I dated a girl whose dad had season tickets to hockey, and I always thought it would be so cool to. It's set. I don't know if you feel this way. Maybe you used to, maybe you don't anymore. But like, when you go to a stadium, so for example, Staples Center, right, where the Lakers play and all that, they have curtains. So you have like the walk around where all the concession stands are, and then when you go to your seat, there's like really heavy dark curtains that you have to pull back, and then you could walk to your row and all that, right? So when the first time I went to Staples Center, and you pull back that curtain and you're just exposed to what you normally only see on TV, it's like the second coming of Christ, right? Not really, but like, it's an experience, right? And so I always thought, man, if I could have that experience more often, that would be amazing. And then if I could pass that to my kids, that'd be even more amazing. It's like, oh my gosh, could you imagine season tickets to the Laker game? Like, that'd be incredible. And then I forgot about it. And then I just remembered like a year or two ago, and I'm like, I'm getting season tickets to the Laker game, dang it. So, but now they're really not worth seeing. So it's quite a disappointment.
You know, it all makes sense now, because in one video, you caught the back of the Tundra and your license plate says baller, and I now understand it all makes sense. It adds up.
I didn't say I bought the season tickets. I said, no, you want to talk about a real baller? I have a client that has he has not even season tickets. He has him and a couple buddies have, I guess, the season, but it's every single event that is held at Staples Center, they have a box for. So they rent out the box, or have an agreement to rent the box for each year for every single event. So when Justin Bieber's there, Disney on Ice, Laker game, Clipper game, hockey game, football game, everything. Every event, every concert, everything. That is baller. But you know what's crazy? It actually, what a problem to have. Listen to this first world problem. It's actually too many tickets because there's always an event. So they're constantly trying to give them away. You know, it's almost too much. It's crazy. And it's like, I don't know, $300,000 a year or something like that to do that. So pretty crazy.
Well, I just want to assure you, as a listener of Auto Detailing Podcast, it doesn't make you any less of a man that you are the first in line to get the Justin Bieber and Disney on Ice tickets from that guy.
100%. I'm like, if Britney Spears and Justin Bieber come in, send the tickets my way. I am there. And no, I'm not bringing my kids, okay? I'm enjoying this night myself.
So I think in this episode we've learned a lot about the psyche of Jimbo Balaam,
yeah, unfortunately,
or Balaam, as the telemarketers might call him.
Yeah, depends who you're asking what my name is.
Well, both the psychology and the physiology of Jimbo should be the title of this episode.
There you go. So,
all right, Joe. I'm fresh out of new ideas.
Okay. Let's. How can people connect with you? We went over an hour, so we did extremely well. How can people connect, or would you prefer no one contact you?
I have absolutely zero presence on social media and plan on
Perfect.
keeping that way. So if somebody wants
All right.
to connect, they can go to my website, which is makemyautoshine.com. Again, that's makemyautoshine. More than happy to help anybody in any way, shape, or form. And if somebody goes on there and they want to critique it, I would say bring it because as fellow detailers who listen to this, they're going to know, hey, Joe, you're a bonehead for doing this, for doing that. And I love to hear that kind of stuff. I don't see it as people being haters, because usually it's people reaching out and generally saying, hey, have you thought of changing this? Or did you know that this is misspelled? It's little stuff like that that I always try to clean up, and it's helpful to have eyes on it like that. So if somebody does contact me and needs some help, glad to help. Somebody goes on my website and has something negative to say, I welcome that kind of stuff. I don't see that as a problem or a challenge. I see that as something that is helpful to help me to grow. So I encourage that.